Let me start with you. The problem we've had here, and we've talked about it, I don't know for how many years, Ben, you and I, is the ECHR is an organisation and a sort of established organisation that sits sort of nowhere and kind of sends down these prognostications which may or may not mean anything. Some countries accept them, some countries don't accept them. We, for some reason, always have accepted them, and I've been saying for ages, why don't we just ignore them? Now, apparently, the government is set to do that.
Well, I mean, whether the government actually does do what it says it's going to do remains to be seen. But you're quite right. The European Court of Human Rights makes up laws on its own. It's not... It doesn't receive its laws from a legislature.
Right.
It has 16 guiding principles, which it's had ever since it was set up just after World War II. And it interprets those guiding principles as it sees fit.
Yeah.
So it is actually making law as it goes along. And, of course, it is the supreme judicial body when it comes to human rights in the United Kingdom. Even Supreme Court judgments in the UK can be overturned by the European Court of Human Rights. And it's made laws which have made it incredibly difficult for the government to actually give effect to what it wishes to do from a democratically legitimate perspective. And so it does need to be reined back in. Ideally, I think, actually, we need to leave the Convention of Human Rights. The notion that the United Kingdom leaving that convention would result in somehow a diminution of human rights in the UK is a fundamentally flawed one.
Or indeed would turn us into some kind of pariah nation.
I know, it's completely wrong. I mean, we led the establishment. I mean, Stephen will know much better than me, but we led the establishment of human rights across the globe at a time when we had an empire, at a time when we were in the zenith of our power. And we're not prone to act in that way. But the thing about illegal migration and the European Court of Human Rights is that it's a bit of a red herring, frankly, Mike. Yes, we should leave the European Convention and move away from the Court of Human Rights. But we don't need to do that to stop the boats. Stopping the boats is simply, as it says on the tin, stop the boat. It's a physical process which involves border control, stopping them at the entry of our territorial waters before they become a problem for the British judicial system. You only need to rely on the European Court of Human Rights once they've landed either on a British boat or on our shores. And we should stop them using the provisions of international law, which entitle us to prevent illegal migration into the country. And indeed, I would argue our government is obliged under that entitlement to fulfil it. And we'd never have a problem with the ECHR in the first place.
No, indeed. Stephen, Ben's right, I think, isn't he? Because the problem here is the fact that these people will continue to come here as long as they know that once they get here, they can give some cock and bull story to the Home Office about whether they're being persecuted somewhere in a far-off land, that they've got relatives here or some other mumbo-jumbo they can make up, and they'll be able to stay here. The hope is that if they can send some people to Rwanda, maybe they'll stop coming. But will they?
Well, this is the key point, isn't it? This European Court of Human Rights decision that's going to be made in November all focuses on whether the government is able to deport migrants to Rwanda. And the government's argument this is a red herring. I think this whole row is aimed at distracting you from the fact that we've had record legal migration, which the Conservatives have control over and have decided against restricting, despite all of their promises, and obviously record illegal migration, tens of thousands of people coming across the channel. And this ECHR row, it's all aimed at getting people excited in newspapers and on TV stations, but it actually distracts from the fact that the Conservative Party have completely failed on this issue, and we have an absolutely disastrous situation where, as I say, we have record numbers coming in, causing all sorts of problems, you know, NHS waiting times, all of these things, housing, you know, there's not enough houses. It's a huge disaster, and this ECHR thing is just a distraction.
Yeah, I think that is a problem, isn't it, Ben? The ECHR sounds good. Lots of people on the right side of the Tory party will say, good, yeah, let's go our own way, let's absolutely plough our own furrow, you know, let's absolutely prove that we can do whatever we want. But, I mean, everything they've said that they were going to do has not worked. You know, they've given hundreds of millions of pounds to the French, who seem to think that for every pound they get, they send us another 10 migrants, you know, on a boat. They've also promised to send people to Rwanda, which hasn't happened. Ascension Island's been mentioned. I think Georgia came up once. You know, the Falkland Islands has been an idea. Then they had the Bibi Stockholm. Nobody even talks about that anymore. I don't even know if it's going to be on it.
That was going to be 500 people, one day's intake.
Yeah, and I mean, even if they were to get the Rwanda plan up and running, they're only going to send something like 3% of the people that come in the first place. So
look,
the whole thing is just ruined, isn't it?
There's no way the Rwanda plan's going to act as a deterrent. When you've made the journey that some of these people have made, right, you know, from Syria all the way through Europe to Calais, braved law enforcement, crossed the Channel, the risk of 10% of you, or 5 to 10% of you being deported to Rwanda is frankly a negligible risk.
Right.
It will not act as a deterrent. And the other thing we've got to remember is that we spend £50,000 a year per migrant. The French spend £5,000 a year per migrant.
Yeah.
Of course they're going to be attracted to come to the United Kingdom. We're so incredibly generous. But the social contract, and I just want to come back to something really pertinent that Stephen identified, the social contract to which Jeremy Hunt referred between the state and the people doesn't apply just to illegal migration. The social contract applies to legal migration. We had 1.1 million people enter this country legally last year. That is a rate of change in the underlying demography of this country with which we cannot cope.
Yes.
There's an economic impact. We all tend to focus on the economic impact, but there is a social impact. It's damaging the fabric of the United Kingdom. And one of the great things that Suella made in her speech was unashamedly identifying that, revealing it, and talking about it for the first time that I've heard a cabinet minister speak about it. You know, multiculturalism is all well and good if migrants come in at a pace where our collective values can evolve for the betterment of their overall country. But the migration that's taking place is taking place so fast that multiculturalism is existing in isolated communities, not homogenizing, not getting the benefit for the nation to move forward. And we're becoming a divided nation. We don't want that.
No.